Hi. So this is the final guest speaker. Welcome back for the final time today. Final guest speaker is Gerry Lindfield. He is an experienced editor and visual effects artist with a career spanning primetime entertainment, sports, and commercial work. After many successful years in editing, Gerry transitioned into visual effects around 2010, becoming a skilled flame artist and expanding his focus to high-end drama and film projects. His visual effects credits include Gangs of London, Lost in London, and music videos for artists such as J. Cole, Damon Albarn, and The Weeknd. Over to you, Gerry.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to meet you all and meet all the future artists of the next generation. I want to start by asking a question. How many of you have ever been told at some point in your life that making a career from being creative was unrealistic? That's quite a few. Now, it may have been by a parent, a teacher, or perhaps a career advisor. Well, for me, it was all three. Now, my parents were working class Irish immigrants. There was no bank on mum and dad. And our neighbours in Plumstead, South East London, definitely weren't film directors. And that kind of puts you in a position where survival really means education. But not education in the arts, not education in film, photography, or anything like that. It meant education in science of some description, because that was the only way you were going to get a job. I remember one of my friends, one of my dad's friends came up to me one day and said, "Do you want a tip?" And I said, "Yeah, all right." And he said, "Refrigeration. Get yourself into refrigeration." I found it quite depressing, because all I wanted to do was take photographs and shoot films. That's what really hit me. So, despite all this, I did make a career, and a good career, out of being creative. And it wasn't easy. And I can only speak from my experience. I can't offer a blueprint. But what I can say is I can share the lessons that I learned on the way and offer my perspective of what I learned that I don't think you can learn anywhere else other than doing it. But the things that might have made a difference to me when I was young, and probably your age, and might have saved me a lot of time. So with that in mind, I would like to tell you what I think my experience matters in this industry and what really doesn't. So, as a kid, I was hypnotised, but not by a hypnotist, by a film. Now, I'm older than probably everyone in this room, so I don't expect you to be aware of the film or know much about these sort of films. Maybe a couple of guys in the front do. But it was a film that was called The Third Man, and when I watched it, something clicked. It was like, I was hypnotised. Now, I didn't understand anything about directing, screenplay, editing, sound design, any of those things that go together to make a film at the time. I just knew that I was hooked. I saw other things that didn't resonate with me, that felt, I don't know, but certain things did. I was also in love with photography. I loved street photography. I wasn't so much interested in the commercial side, I was just interested in the street photography, the kind of photographers of the day, the East European photographers, people like Brazai, Brandt, Curtage, people like that. Unfortunately, nobody else was. Nobody else I knew had any interest in this whatsoever, so it was a kind of private passion, if you like. So, what I did is I took the safe route, the safe option, which was to study maths and physics. So, I think I was the first person in my family ever to go to do A-level, but then I went on to do a degree as well, so I did a degree in maths and physics, and I was hopeless, but I still passed. I worked hard and I passed. And by this stage, I decided that was it. I would take a safe, secure job. I'd ignore the photography, I'd ignore all that. But if I was going back and looking back on that time, what I'd have said to myself is, that passion is information. It's information about you, and it doesn't go away. And the more you ignore it, the more it comes back. And I would have said to myself, what you need to do, because I was very afraid of rejection. I was quite shy, and rejection felt terrible. So I never exposed my work to anyone. I was taking photographs. I was taking good photographs. And this was when I was very young. But I'd show them to people, and it sort of cagey, and people thought I was a professional photographer. So I put so much effort into it. I never tried selling them. I never tried exhibiting them or do anything like that. So I just assumed, well, that's me. I've got no chance. I'll just get a job as a whatever. So I did the next best thing. I thought, well, if there isn't a back door, if there isn't a front door open to me, I'll go through the back door. So I applied for a job as an engineer in outside broadcast at the BBC. Now, at the time, the BBC was producing everything in-house. It was a completely different organisation to it is today. So all the big dramas, everything was made inside. I thought, if I can work there as an engineer, I'll probably be able to slip over into the camera work department or something like that, and actually, that'll be it. I'll be happy. Didn't quite work like that. What happened was, after a sort of fairly gruelling set of exams, I passed and ended up in a station in Acton with a load of broken bits of kit, which, to be honest with you, I was rubbish, really rubbish. I hated it, had no passion for it, had no interest in it. But I realised that in order to I could still do a good job. There were guys there who are much cleverer than me, much more in love with technology than me, and they were quite happy fixing things, and I was like quite happy carrying things to them, asking people. I would fix things occasionally, but I kind of fitted in, and I kind of got to know people, and at the time that struck me as a kind of, well, this is something they don't really teach you, is that even if you're different from people, you can find out what it is about you that gets on with them. Don't try and be like them, try and be like yourself, but help and form alliances with people. So I did that for a while, and then I eventually, an opportunity arose at what was called BBC Television Training, where they trained filmmakers. And this was the day when they still had film, real film. So they actually used to run real filmmaking courses on what were called Stingbecks. They were old film editors. And I was an engineer up there, and it was a time when they started introducing what at the time was called non-linear editing. There was Lightworks and there was Avid, which were the first two major players. But it was still tape editing. And I discovered the edit suite and absolutely loved it. I kind of got lost. I'd be working all day, then I'd go to the edit suites at night, work all night, make films constantly. I couldn't get enough of it. And I would do so much of it that I would start getting a reputation as a good editor. And people would ask for me to edit on the course. And this kind of went to my head a bit. I thought, oh, I'm pretty good at it, pretty good. And people were asking for me, and I was getting inflated. My ego was up here somewhere, and that was great. That was great. I thought, this is it. I'll get a job. I'll be bound to get a job as an editor now. Unfortunately, I got a bit of a reality check. Now, the reality check came in the form of a high-stakes course. They were running a course that was being set up in order for directors to go on primetime shows. And I thought, great, fantastic. I'll get to meet some directors. I'll work on the course. I'll be an editor. And my manager took me aside and said, I've got some bad news for you. I said, what's that? And he said, you're not going to edit on the course. I said, why not? I'm pretty good. And he said, well, what they want is practitioners. I said, practitioners? Yeah, but I mean, I'm good. And they said, no, they want people that have worked on real shows, real broadcasts, with real deadlines, and real pressures. I said, oh, okay, fair enough, I was a bit cut out. But when the editors turned up, I sort of noticed something that was very different in their mindset from mine. And what it was they weren't interested in proving themselves at all. They weren't interested in doing a fantastic job. They weren't interested in making it brilliant. They weren't interested in showing how clever they were or anything like that. All they wanted to do, they had this attitude of curiosity. How can I serve the story? How can I do something that will enhance the director's vision? And that was the bit that I'd been missing. And I was thinking, how do you get that? And it played on me for quite a while because I didn't want to be stuck in this track. I wanted to really push myself. I thought, well, I've wanted this so long now, I'll do anything to get it. So what I learnt at this point was that my understanding or my theory about learning everything about editing, learning all the technical stuff, even reading books on editing, how it goes together, all this kind of stuff, it's not a substitute for experience. Experience is the only way you really learn. So I thought, well, what I'll do is apply for a job outside. So I took a huge risk. Basically, I had a pension, I had a salary, I was married, I had a mortgage, I think I had my first child then. But this is something I really wanted to do. So I applied for a job in Soho as an editor at a production company. And at the time, it was quite notorious. I always remember my managers come up to me, looked me in the eye and said, "Are you sure you know what you're doing?" And I said, "No." But I wanted to do it, And what he meant was that it was a very different space. So I started editing, and this was probably in the late 90s. And editing was very different then. It was huge tape suites, complicated vision mixers, complicated what we call DVEs. It was done on tape. So the technical side itself was hugely complicated, but that wasn't the problem. What the problem for me was that I'd gone from a place where I had space to learn, space if things went wrong. I could make mistakes. There was nothing dramatic was going to happen. To suddenly being put in what felt like the pilot of an airliner, and if I did anything wrong, the whole company would fold because they couldn't sell the shows. And there was deadlines. They had to go out on Thursday. And it was a program called Cybernet, which was like a kind of games show. So there's versions of that. But I thought, oh, okay, that's a 40-minute show. That's not a big deal. You're cutting from scratch, and 40 minutes is a long time in TV. But you're not only doing that, you're doing the main version, and you're doing versions for different countries. So you're cutting about 10 different versions of that show. And on top of that, there was another show. There was a show called The Album Show, which was like a 1-hour program. And this is where I kind of felt the real stress. The stress really hit me. And I didn't know what to do. So I kind of panicked a bit because I wasn't sleeping, I was burnt out. And I remember thinking, what do people do in this? How do people cope in this situation? So I spoke to my manager at the time and said, look, I could really do with getting one of the people that worked here beforehand to come in and help me, because this is difficult. But I didn't want to admit defeat. I was very, I don't know, I think my pride took over. But the release in just getting someone, and when he came in, he said to me, first thing he said to me, he goes, "I know what you're going through." And that seemed to evaporate the stress. It didn't take it away, but for that moment, it all seemed to evaporate. Because I had someone that I could talk to, knew what I was talking about, cared about what I was talking about, and understood what I was talking about. So I carried on working here for 2 years, and this was as an online editor. And the pressure kind of subsided a bit, and what happened after a while is you may have heard of imposter syndrome, which is a very real thing. The pressure subsided, and it kind of became a part of me. And I became a workaholic. I was like working 12-hour days every day. I was never seeing the sun. I was not taking meal breaks. It was like people were literally bringing me food in front of the editor, eating and carrying on working. And this wasn't unusual at that time in Soho. So after about 2 years, I decided that I don't want to stay here forever, because although I'm working in the creative industry, what I feel like I'm doing is not creative. It's the same thing over and over and over again under huge pressure. But the lessons I learned at that point was that I went in thinking that understanding was the key thing here, or talent, or what I thought I knew about myself. But the reality was it was the skill. And the skill comes from practicing difficult things over and over and over again. And what that means is that when you practice them to a point whereby it's boring, keep going. Because what happens, as soon as you're under pressure, your mind goes into panic mode and your decision making goes out the window. And you do get paid the big money, I would say, in the film industry, TV industry, for dealing with pressure. That's certainly one thing. So after about 2 years of this, I decided, right, okay, I need to do something different. I was paranoid that I was like on a little island, and I wanted to go out and find out what everyone else is doing, do other stuff, do more interesting work. So, the BBC started advertising for a job internally as an editor, which was really unusual. And I decided to go for it. And I had a feeling that they valued my experience, because I would say the BBC, being a big organisation, you get looked after a lot more than you do in a small company. In a small company, you don't get training, you won't get anything. It's just you do it, you sort it all out. So I went back to the BBC and I took up, worked in several genres. I worked as a sports editor, which is very high pressure, on live football matches, things like Match of the Day, the Olympics, the World Cups. I travelled all over the world, Brazil, South Africa, etc., doing World Cups. Cutting opening ceremonies while they were still on air. So you're cutting part of the ceremony while the first part is still on air. There's an audience of 20 million. So it was very high pressure stuff. But again, the same thing that got me through that was that people didn't think I was great. They knew I was dependable. They knew I'd done it before, they'd seen me do it, and they trusted me. I worked in entertainment. I worked on Strictly Come Dancing, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Sorry? Weakest Link. Lots of shows. Bamzuki. I mean, I can't remember a lot of them, but they were all different, very, very different. And one thing you find in the editing world is you get stereotyped. So if you're a sports editor, they won't go near you in drama. If you're a drama editor, they won't go near you in sports. If you're an entertainment editor, you've probably got enough work, actually. There's a lot of work in entertainment. But I was just curious. I just wanted to keep doing more things. I also worked in the promo department, so I became an A-list editor. In fact, I was an A-list editor in all three departments, but in promos, where you're telling a story in 30 seconds, but it has to compete with everything else, the adverts that were on TV at the time. And the skill I learned there was, again, same pressures, but knowing exactly what's needed. What is this person after? They don't care if you've done this, that, and the other. What they care about is you can do a good promo, you can sell what it is they're trying to sell. Then I got a bit bored. Well, I didn't really get bored with it. I was still curious, so I wanted to do other stuff. So a friend of mine I was really close with, who was a very, very, very talented editor, and a musician, and he said, why don't you come work on Flame with me? And Flame at the time was this kind of big, I think it cost about £500,000, the actual computer at the time. This was 20 odd years ago. But it was very, very high end. At the time it was, it was complex. So we started moving towards visual effects work. What I noticed there when I was working in the Flame suite was that my relationships with people who I'd worked with in different areas completely changed. It was really bizarre. Like someone I'd known for 15 years, worked with them every time I come in, and suddenly they felt more pressurised because they were working in this much more expensive. I think they charged something like £300 an hour to work in there at the time. This was a long time ago. So I found that undermining. Again, the pressure came in. The pressure, God, what's going on? Oh, I don't know what I'm doing now because of the pressure. But what I did and consistently do is always prepare. You know, someone mentioned to me once that failure to prepare is preparation for failure, and it's absolutely true. Absolutely true. No matter what you're doing, always make sure you're well prepared and you know what you're getting yourself into, and just avoiding that kind of burnout which can take over. So I was working on Flame, doing visual effects for a while, and then I got made redundant. And oh no, what do I do now? So I thought, right, okay, I remember applying for a job as an underground train driver, thinking that'll 50, you know, thinking that'll pay the mortgage and stuff like that. I didn't get it. But what I noticed was I was getting lots of offers of work. People were contacting me because they knew I was dependable. I got a reputation as being dependable. It wasn't so much that you do one amazing job, because what generally happens is you do jobs that actually make your hair stand. Well, I haven't got any, but make you, if you had hair, it would make your hair stand on end. And the thing about that is, you feel great about it, but everyone else forgets it. So what they want to know is you can do the job and do the job well. And I started getting a lot of work. So I was now freelance, and then I made again a friend Dan here, who. Very talented VFX artist as well. We kind of got to know each other, and again, we shared skills, you know, because I had different connections, he had different skills, I had different skills. We shared skills, and I focused on working. And I started getting more and more involved in drama visual effects and TV visual effects and music videos and stuff like that. So, I mean, a lot of that work is clean-up work. I think Simon was involved in some of the 3D work on some of that. So most of the work I do now is really finishing. It's what works as a final product. And the reason that's important is because that early love of photography has sort of developed my eye for what works visually, not necessarily technically. And there's quite a common trap, is that people fall into in the creative world, people don't really care how something's achieved technically. They don't care. They just want it to look like they want it to look. And if you've been practicing that over and over again over years and years and years, you kind of get that sense. And it kind of goes back to the photography thing, is that I just loved images. I love making things work. And that's kind of where I ended up. So at the moment, I mean, a lot of this stuff is old. It's very old, and it's before AI, so it was all a lot of it was hand done. But with AI now, the way I look at AI is not creative in the sense that artists are creative. So artists use AI as a tool to achieve something creative, a creative output. And it still comes down to the relationships you establish with directors, production managers, producers, various people in the industry. And if you can give them what they're looking for, it's a bit like a job title. If you give them what you're looking for, they will come back to you. So the things I would have gone back to myself as a kid and said, what would have changed? Well, first of all, I would have got more experience at rejection. I would have deliberately got rejected. Because I've since learned, because I now do coaching as well, and I've learned that in psychology, the best way to deal with rejection is by getting rejected. And on magazines, they go on courses where they get rejected. They go up to people to get rejected, because it's like a fuse in your brain that gets used to it. And after a while, you're thinking, what was I worried about getting rejected? And what you see with that is you see people who've been on those courses go up with something that they've been working a week on, you've been working 5 years, and they come across, because they're so confident. They're so confident. The way they stand, they understand their body language, they understand what the person's after, they know how to use the right words, and they might get the job. That's what I would have done. They can't do what I do. They can't do what I do. But it's amazing how many times I've done work which I thought, are you sure? Are you sure you want to pay me for doing this? And they said, what are you talking about? Okay, fair enough. And one of the things as an artist, artists tend to, in my opinion, undervalue themselves. I was having a conversation outside earlier, and it was quite interesting because one of the things that artists tend to want to do is do creative stuff at the expense of everything else. I think that can be quite dangerous. And I think where there's low risk, for example, it's not going to damage your career, it's not going to, you're not putting something that's going out on air tomorrow, you're not doing something that's going to cost thousands of pounds. Take risks. Take risks. Exaggerate your potential. Exaggerate what you do. Say you can do it. And then worry about how you do it afterwards. There's a point where I wouldn't advise that, but I would honestly do that because you're practicing, you're building relationships. And relationships are built on things falling apart, strangely. They're built on things not working out, and then you think, oh, actually, if we do this. It's a kind of weird thing, but they are hugely important in the industry. I would also say be bolder. And what I've learned in life, and particularly in my industry, is that boldness in life is rewarded. What I mean by being bolder, again, it's a bit like risk-taking, but just be bolder. Be bolder in what you do. The first speaker today mentioned a few of the points that I was going to mention as well about forming relationships with good people. You know when you're working with someone with good people because they think like you. It's true. I'm not saying I've got a great mind, but when I say great minds think alike, you'll meet someone that, we think the same way about this, I'm not a graphic designer, but I know when I'm seeing bad design because it's a language. It's a language. So I get a graphic designer. I wouldn't work on a high-end promo and say I'll do the graphic design. I mean, I can do nice graphic design, but I get a graphic designer because I understand what it is. Yeah, I can build a house in 3D, but I'm not a 3D artist. But I know enough about it to know my limitations and know when to get a proper 3D artist. But sometimes you can work the reverse. It's like I've been doing something. You can do something long enough and not realise you're aware of you're doing it. So, have I got anything else to say? I don't think I have. But if you want to ask me any questions, please do.
Thank you.